We are started.
Start with a little badoom.
Okay, people, we are going to start with...
Boom.
Please, everybody, welcome Pastor Erika, the pastor of Connection Codes. She is the pastor of Connection. She's the pastor of Connection. Please welcome Logan. He is our... Erika, what's his title?
Next gen pastor.
Can I have a cooler title than that?
I was thinking I almost couldn't say it because I wanted.
Why don't we say
something-
cool pastor? Hip, trendy, the pastor of trends.
Yes. I'm
And
here.
please welcome Jimmy.
Homeschool pastor. Bam.
It is actually true. I am very homeschooled. Are there areas where you guys can really tell that I'm homeschooled? Like, let's be honest. Let's just start the
I
podcast this way.
100% can, yes.
Give me one, and I will talk to the Lord about it and see if it's true. Because I was homeschooled for 12 freaking years, my entire life. And there is things that I was just behind on.
There
when
was
it came to the
super
world.
funny that we talked about the other day. Something
how I
just
pronounce
happened and
things?
you didn't know what it was, and I was like, "Have you lived under a rock?"
Oh, school buses.
Well, yeah, that was one. But there was a different one recently.
To be clear, I know that school buses exist. I just thought
So the yellow
everyone
ones-
gets a school bus ride.
Even
but
if they
Erika-
live half a block away from the school,
Yeah.
they get a school bus ride.
Yeah, so Erica's like, I drove my kids to school. And I'm like, why not take advantage of school buses? But apparently it's a country thing. Logan, what are some things that are homeschooler that come up every once in a while?
Well, I don't want to like
Because I'm pretty cultured.
you. Yeah. Cultured would be the word. I think sometimes you're mesmerized and amazed by some social norms that aren't so
Like a
mesmerizing to the rest of
skyscraper?
us.
Like a skyscraper?
No, just like the way people do things. I don't know, maybe.
Like,
Which is good.
Come on,
I think
get
it
some
means-
specifics.
Well, I can.
there.
I can. I'm more just like,
Like, whoa.
yeah, kind of.
What?
It's good. It's like
That's
a childlikeness.
Is that a telephone?
It's kind of. That'd be the exaggerated version of it, but like, I don't know. Every once in a while, it's not like it's terrible. It's just like every once in a
call
while
it
you'll say
childlike.
something, and they'll be like,
Yeah.
I find that peculiar that that's so amazing to you. But I'm sure we all have that, to be honest.
Yeah.
What if I'm just overly positive and excited about everything
It's
and very
great.
excitable?
I don't know. It's amazing.
Okay, but to be honest, you guys would say I'm not awkward, right? An awkward homeschooler?
Whatever you say.
Rate me out of 10, and then we'll get this podcast started.
It depends on the
10
context.
10 is very cultured, and 1 is awkward.
Well, you're definitely not very cultured. Not really many of us are, I would say.
Yeah, it totally depends on the context. Like if we just took you into a room. Jordan last night was at a birthday for all
Did
these
it-
scaffolder guys.
Yeah.
And it's like if we had just dropped you into that,
Yeah.
I feel like we'd be able to tell.
Interesting.
But I think in church world and in all the people you rub shoulders with and in the pastors'
Yeah, I mean,
conferences,
honestly, cultural norm is appropriated to the culture that you're in.
Yeah.
So it doesn't.
Wow,
really matter.
thanks, guys.
You're normal.
Logan, you aren't homeschooled, but you have some Mennonite tendencies.
I do.
What's that one word you and Jordan Coop always
No,
say?
it's her. Actually, I feel like.
Erica says it too. What is it? It's you add an S, you make it plural, and it's never plural.
Something.
It's like anyways or
Yep, they say anyways.
anyways.
I think I say anyways too. And seen.
I never say that one. Not sure if your husband says that.
There's something like that where I'm like, man, that guy's homeschooled. Anyway, to be clear, homeschooling is cool. We are homeschooling all our children.
So on a scale of 1
And-
to 10, how homeschooled am I?
Were you homeschooled too?
No.
Were you not homeschooled at all?
Not a day.
I
Neither
would
was
say
I.
you were very, very not homeschooled.
She's worldly, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And we kind of took her under our wings and
Trying really hard to
discipled her.
Yeah.
restore me.
Yeah, you're very not homeschooled. So, okay.
Welcome.
Well, this is the Backstage pastor. You know what? The point is there's hope for everyone out there. If you feel like you're awkward
Listen,
or
if you're
your kids-
watching this message, this is for you.
yeah, there's
Cue inspirational music.
there's
You are a winner.
okay, I would love to just talk and process the month of prayer and fasting. Process the house fires. There was originally there was going to be 8 house fires, which is prayer for those who aren't evangel, which is like prayer nights in different houses, different leaders. And then there was an extra seniors house fire, which you guys didn't know about because you're not a senior. And then there was an extra kind of just bonus house fire, or one that just popped up when we went through just some of the difficulties of last week, which we'll probably talk about a little bit here. And then there was the prayer summit. So that's 11 all together
prayer gatherings
throughout the month of prayer and fasting. So let me ask this first. Was there, when it comes to the house fires, which was just, to be honest, I don't know if Tiana and I were praying or we were just dreaming about prayer and fasting. I think it was after her preach where the idea just came up. I don't know if I've heard of the idea before. Obviously it's happened. Like we grew up our family in a Presbyterian church for 20 years. So we had house church in our home every single Tuesday. And so with the house fires, what like shocked you guys about it? What were some of the pros, the cons? What happened for you guys? What came alive through the house fires? What intrigued you by the house fires? I'd love to just talk them through and then have a couple of questions. And then would love to talk intercession.
Sure. Well, Erica's looking at me, meaning I need to speak first. I don't know about shocked. I don't know if anything shocked me. If anything pleasantly reminded me and affirmed some of the thoughts I've had. You know, I go on a tiny little ramble tangent here.
Okay.
I've definitely been feeling like the tension of, and I know Erica, we were just even talking about in staff meeting this morning.
Yeah.
The whole idea around corporate church and Christianity, where we meet in a building, and because it's a larger group, we've accumulated enough resources to make beautiful lighting and beautiful sound and beautiful whatever. And so it's very excellent. And there's a really capable leader and people that know how to steward moments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And because of that, you can sometimes just lose the humanity of just people that walk together and love Jesus.
Right.
And it can become a corporation and a show and an entertainment thing, which is super sad and not at all our goal. Not at all. And anyway, so what House Fires does is it really brings it back to a very original model, which you would see like in the book of Acts, where people just meet together, eat food together, fellowship together, listen to the apostles' teaching, and they are just together.
Communion.
There's nothing
helping
like
each other,
crazy about it. And I think that's super activating and a massive, massive, massive missing piece in our Western church. And I'm not saying the corporate gathering should be, I'm not saying we need to get rid of it, because I think, you know, I really appreciate the corporate anointing that comes when you have so many people together. It's beautiful.
Right. You've seen beautiful mega churches.
Oh, it's beautiful. But we need to pair that with
so good.
the community. It's like there needs to be. I remember Tony once said,
"Who's Tony?"
Our father-in-law. He said he was in Vancouver, and he was just taking note of the power of small towns.
Right.
And he was saying that in a city, he noticed, and I've noticed in cities too, where like this corner, all these people will gather at this pub. They create like a small town feel in the midst of the big city. Yeah. And I think you need to keep that in church world too, where it's like, who's your people? Who are you meeting with on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Who's gonna walk in the middle of you and your wife's arguments and call you out? Like who do you have walking with you daily, experiencing the presence of God daily, that is not in the corporate setting with electric guitars and beautiful lighting? So that just was confirming to me again. I love that. I think that's where the power is for the individual expansion of God's kingdom, is in those small settings. Big things happen in small groups. Yeah.
Wow.
That's so good. Mm-hmm. There was something so holistic. We knew it would be good and amazing, but there was something that is just so holistic about what it was in so many ways. Erika Len.
I would say for me, from the first one, it felt like the Holy Spirit, the sword of the Spirit came and just cut apart hype and oil. And I've never seen it so divided. And
describe that for a second.
Yeah,
what do you mean by hype and oil there?
Just we're in homes, and people are trying to bring worship or bring music, and it was so beautiful, but we're all really crowded in there.
Yeah.
And that's awkward, and sometimes you don't know where to stand, and then you in worship you could put your hand up and smoke somebody in the head because you're just so squished. Or you're
right.
Like, that feeling of
very human.
Yeah, it was just super human, and small houses and piles of boots. And I just felt the Lord like really, really highlighting to me, because there would be this awkward moment where it would be silent. And then the Holy Spirit would still move and fall, and there'd be these really beautiful anointed moments, and just this cutting. I just felt this cutting. Actually, the other analogy that comes to mind is the winnowing fork, and it's like we can think of the winnowing fork in our lives and in our character. He scoops, and then the wheat is heavy and the wheat falls and the chaff blows away in the wind. But it was almost like he was using the winnowing fork to separate the hype from the oil and give us eyes to recognize and eyes to see.
Yes.
And that's really what happened for me, is just this. It grew a hunger for me in oil, and it almost grew an allergy for hype.
Right. When you're saying oil and hype, I think that comes from Stephanie Gretzinger, and she just describes the difference between like oil is like something that naturally flows from the throne room. And in the Old Testament, the presence of God was used to anoint, David with oil or whatever. And it's natural. I don't necessarily want to say it feels easy, but like it feels light, maybe.
It's also valuable. It's not like oil's like it's
right.
It's not cheap.
Yes.
Real,
Yeah. Well, versus energy, us just being, good leaders and like hyping people.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually a lot of interesting studies that people have done in lots of cultures and lots of religions around what good music and good sounds and good environment can actually do inside of your spirit that isn't the Holy Spirit. It actually is just your body responding to vibration, your body responding to energy. Good. And so just this, do we have in our excellence, in our pursuit of excellence, are we creating an environment that requires less faith? So there are no awkward moments. The music just is perfect.
Right.
We bring all this energy and we create this perfect environment. And then if the oil doesn't fall, it's okay. It's not awkward.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. There's a back door.
Right.
Yeah.
You're so good at not manipulating, but leading people's emotional experience that they
really
can't.
good.
I think honestly, I actually don't feel like, this is just a hot take, that most believers can't decipher their spirit from their emotional experience. It's actually like they're not quite sure, but
right.
And I think sometimes they get
spirit
so caught up in one will transform your life, one will just give you a moment.
Yeah, feels good.
But a spirit moment it's like something changes. So you can definitely like pull on people's emotional experience and maybe even like bring them into the spirit of the room. You do that in hockey games all the time. You feel the spirit of the room.
Yeah,
it's like electric, right?
A movie.
Yeah. And you're pulled into it.
The Holy Spirit responds to our hunger, and sometimes we create an opportunity, or we create. It's almost like you bring the aroma of a feast, and then people feel hungry for what you have.
Yeah.
And so there's a time and a place for us to create this atmosphere of craving the Holy Spirit. We can bring our hunger and cast vision, and that could be hype, but that could be a very good used hype. Let me just demonstrate this table before you. Let me. There's an aroma here. I'm going to tell you about it. And sometimes we use personal experience. So a certain song reminds your spirit of a time where you've tasted and seen that the Lord was good. Now you have hunger for what He's doing, and now your hunger is for oil. It's not for hype. So I'm not saying that we don't.
Yeah.
You and Jordan went to every single house fire.
Yep.
Was that exhausting?
Yeah, it was. But
what happened where you're like, oh, there's already another one? Or was it like over the month, it kind of like it became a culture for you?
Yeah, at first it was just really exciting. It was really exciting to see what the Lord was going to do. and they were so good, and it was almost
and
like
different.
Our curiosity got piqued. But this was an interesting month of prayer and fasting for me. I have felt not a big commissioning for all these things I was doing. And I used to be like an avid faster,
right?
You know, wanting to do the most and the longest and the whatever.
And you would fast every day, right?
I've gone through intermittent seasons of intermittent fasting. I've done the 7 days. We did a dry fast. We did no water, like
for 3 days, right?
Yeah, and
That's
then
insane.
continued for 4 more days of water only after that. But just this stillness. And so I actually asked the Lord, like, in frustration, and I know I shared this before, but what's the difference between stillness and apathy? Like, I'm like, God, like, won't I just be apathetic? Aren't you just being apathetic here? And he said hunger. And so I'm like, how do I cultivate hunger? And he was just like, put yourself in positions where you can taste something that the Lord is good, or that you can smell the aroma. And that was what the house fires were for us.
Yeah.
Is Jordan and I continuously put ourselves in a position where we could smell the aroma and grow hunger and get more hunger. Right. And that's what continuously happened. And so towards the end, there were days where it was really hard. It was really hard to make it to Jordan and Logan's. We had to surmount a lot of logistical hard things. We were extremely late for yours because of family logistics. And in our family, you know, we're getting sleep deprived. The laundry's not getting done. Like, just so many evenings. But every time it's not that it was filling. It was that it's hunger creating.
Yeah. So cool. I'm reminded in Revelation of the story where the prayers of the saints are pictured in Revelation as of a bowl, and the prayers are landing in the bowl and filling it up. And once the bowl gets full, it starts overflowing back onto the earth. And it felt like even we were saying that it felt like one house fire by itself was not in and of itself everything, but it felt like brick by brick by brick, prayer by prayer by prayer, stuff was starting to shift and is starting to shift. One of the shockers, there was lots, but 2 that I would just want to share. One of the shockers was mobilizing very gifted, talented, capable, but Holy Spirit led people within our church that do not necessarily lead on a Sunday morning. They aren't necessarily preaching. They aren't necessarily on the backstage pastor, but mobilizing them to lead a house fire and just fan the gift that the Lord's given them into flame. That was a huge aha moment for me, which I knew would happen, but didn't know the extent of like the extent and the beauty of it. Like how beautiful it is that like, oh, wait a second. We did 11 prayer meetings, and one of the house fires was 132 people. That's crazy. Josh and Destiny's. And like crammed into this house, a big house, but lots of little rooms. And just seeing like the different leaders come alive and carry weight and be like mobilized. Yeah. And another beautiful thing was the house fires that like were just so amazing and just packed out and just so beautiful were house fires that like weren't pastor led. They were like our people who call Evangel home leading them. It's beautiful. Yeah. And it just showed that like, oh man, we can just be the bottleneck so many times, I think.
Yeah, so good.
And there's so much that the Lord actually wants to do. The other thing was when we went through what we went through last week, just with my brother's 18-month-old daughter quickly passing away and just the pain of that, and Mary, my sister, and I, and brother Mark rushing off to Edmonton just to be with them. And then we're with them for 2 nights, 3 days, and just being in that deep pain at the end of our month of prayer and fasting, in the middle of the 3-day fast. And I didn't get to experience it. You guys did. But what we've just called like the bonus house fire that happened, or the one that happened. What was so beautiful was that like we were in the rhythm of prayer, and we were in the rhythm of intercession, and in the rhythm of going to people's houses and praying. And it so naturally, the day that little Elizabeth was on the machines, and they were just trying to keep her alive until my brother could get there with the 5 boys. The Tiana, I think, just sent out a couple text messages and said, hey, this is just a place of worship and prayer at our place. Feel free. We're interceding on behalf of Elizabeth's life. And then that day she passed away. And then, a bunch of you guys like just really believing like for resurrection, that like death is not the time where it's like, okay, that's where we stop praying and then shift to just praying peace over the family. And Jesus, I know that can be a scary thought and an awkward thought, but Jesus showed us that. It's like, that's not a line that you press up to and then you stop at that line.
Yeah.
If the Lord is leading you, it's like, little girl, wake up, come out, Lazarus. And so it was so beautiful for me to see how easily you guys all just gathered in our house. And it was like 40 or 45 of you guys. It felt so natural that like this devastation and catastrophe happened. And it was so easy and not out of the ordinary for like, oh, we know exactly what to do. We've been praying all month long. This is, more intense, more emotional, more like felt bigger, felt like the stakes are bigger, but just like, oh, the church knows what to do. We know what to do. We don't separate ourselves. We don't get off by ourselves. We like pull together just like an axe. It was so beautiful to hear about. And I saw a couple videos of it. Yeah.
Tiana processed with me a little bit and, some guilt to share her experience about her here, but she just processed feeling some guilt or feeling just a bit awkward about asking people to come and pray
into our pain,
into your pain. And she's like, it does feel like a corporate thing. And I said, I actually thought there's such a significance on that, even if it's not a corporate thing.
Right.
Where Tiana, the same thing actually is what happened in the connection codes thing. She's giving permission for people to say, hey, I need my family to show up here and pray with me. Yeah. And our culture needs to shift into that. Yeah, we do need to, when tragedy happens, we are quite a private culture. And instead we need to be saying, hey, my house is open. Can you come and pray and worship with me? And this needs to be a thing where we're showing up for each other in that way. And I told her, I'm like, I have so much joy that you did this because you're giving people permission to do this. And we need this shift.
And it felt like family. It looked like family from pictures.
Yeah.
It looked raw. There was no specific person leading it. There's no big leader at the front.
Totally. Well, there's a huge, that I love. I was even going to talk into that. Even I know, Erika, you grew up on the farms, where it was very community, family. We're all living together, based. And I know there's some positive and negative experiences there. But as a whole, I personally, and I've looked into it a little bit and seen some of the fruit of cultures that do walk more in that. Thinking of like maybe some Filipino or Eastern Asia cultures, even some South American cultures. They just do it all together. We're always together. We're always
Hutterites,
together. Yes,
Mennonites,
and I think it's so beautiful and quite sad that our North American culture has just boxed us into our rows of houses and we do everything privately.
Right.
I'm sure there's ways that it's been done wrong in the past, but I do believe we were meant to do things together.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you look at like Jewish culture, when somebody passed away, we sit Shiva together. We mourn together.
Or a wedding.
Yeah. And they're long. It's long and it's in the trenches together or in the joy together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Logs, could you just go into what was happening for you at the bonus house fire when when Elizabeth was on life support and then when she passed away? And I would love for you just to go into the tension of praying for the, you said, there's a 99.9999999% chance that she won't be raised from the dead. Right. But there's the 0.00001 chance, and I'm going to go for that.
Right.
What happens for you? Maybe bring in Olive a little bit, kind of your theology around that and totally. What happens there.
Yeah, so we did contend for resurrection. Our biblical precedence is none other than Jesus. He rose the dead multiple times. He himself rose from the dead. And Old Testament gives us precedence for that as well. Not to mention countless historical examples post Jesus that have still happened, and people that we know personally that have experienced and pray for people.
Yeah, David Hogan.
Yeah, Pastor Lowe. That have experienced resurrection. So
crazy. Pastor Lowe has experienced that?
Yeah, I think twice or 3 times.
That's
told me some of the
insane.
Stories. So, yeah, God still raises the dead. And I just have, this statement I've found really encapsulates so much of mine and my wife's posture towards life, is that we're going to win for the Lamb the reward of his suffering. If he paid for it, we're going to make darn sure we do all we can to deposit it.
Right.
And at the expense of awkwardness and just like, what are we doing? We're pushing against all cultural norms. We're pushing against all comfort levels. Doesn't matter. He's so worthy and he paid for this. I'm going to make sure we get this. Yeah. So our journey with praying for resurrection started. That was 2019, so 6 years ago, when Callie Heiligenthal's daughter Olive passed away, one of Bethel's former worship leaders, and she was a worship pastor. Jordan was actually mentored under her. Her, very similar, I think it was a 1.5-year-old daughter, Olive, passed away with SIDS. And the parents wanted to contend and fight for her life, and they invited the whole church and the whole school ministry. And it's a big church.
The parents felt, by the way, she wrote Alabaster Heart, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Some of you guys might know that song.
Yeah, totally.
The parents specifically felt like this was not supposed to happen.
Yeah,
this is not the end.
Yeah, they wanted to contend, and so they brought us on to it. There's thousands of people. It kind of blew up. It went a bit viral on social media. Everybody was praying. It kind of swept the nation a little bit and rekindled. God can still raise the dead, and we're gonna pray for it. Right. And so that was so powerful for us. It changed our lives. It marked us forever. We will never view death the same after that. We never,
it was like all night. Worship and prayer
like for a week. Yeah, for a week long. And it was there's no more exhausting thing I've found than praying for resurrection. It was funny. We were talking to Tyson the day after, because we had a house fire at our house the night after.
Right.
And Tyson was saying to Jordan, he was like, "We are just so exhausted from yesterday." And we were just like, we remember that when we did that. We did it like, I think 7 or 8 days in a row. We met and we just prayed for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in a big building. Super exhausting. And I think part of the exhaustion is you're pushing up against this very impossible situation. Everything's impossible. Let's make it clear. Every miracle is impossible.
But it's viewed as the end.
Yeah. Like our human mind really cannot wrap itself around like, there could be something after death. Death could be reversed. And so, and there's this sense of desperation involved. So going there again on Wednesday was very powerful for me. It's, you don't actually get, not in my ministry. I haven't yet. I would love to have a dead raising ministry. But you don't get the opportunity to pray for resurrection that often. You really don't. And so this is the second time. There was another time where I was leaning into it, but the people of the deceased person were fine with that person passing, and they didn't want to pray for resurrection. So it was different. But on Wednesday, to lean back into that and to just declare again, I don't have a fallback plan. I am very well aware. I'm not a fool. I know that everybody dies. I know that only Jesus and Elisha are the only 2 people that have ascended and not tasted death. Even if they've been resurrected, they eventually tasted death. I'm aware of that. I'm aware that everybody dies, and that this is so slim, and I could look so foolish, especially the more radically I push into my conviction that it will happen. I'll never forget, and I don't think I'll change my belief system around this. Bill Johnson said, faith doesn't say God can, faith says God will. God can leaves in a back door saying he can, but he might not.
Right.
But God will says, I'm in this no matter what. And if he doesn't, we'll sort that out later. But as of right now, my faith says he will. Yeah. And to do that, to go there, to lead yourself, and actually almost violently. When on Wednesday night, I told my wife, I was like, I kind of actually, it felt like my spirit drove the car of my body, and I feel thrashed around a little bit by the intensity of what the Spirit wanted to do in contending for resurrection. And she wasn't raised, so now we have more questions. I have more questions, more opportunities to declare the Lord is good in the face of what could say the opposite. more fragrance to offer to him.
Yeah.
In disappointment. It was marking for me to go back to that again and fully go there. There's no, I'm burning all my bridges. I'm 100%.
Yes.
I'm getting on this plane.
Yeah.
I don't care if it crashes. We're going to get on this plane and send it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, so good.
Fear to just make rabbit trail, but just listening to you and processing that, and Jordan Harder, you're Jordan, just talking about like, is she the most lucky? Is she the most chosen? Does Elizabeth have the most favor because she just gets to go be with Jesus right now?
Yeah, it's true.
And I just listening to you, I was thinking about times. I know one woman who died on the operating table for a while, and she remembers seeing Jesus, and she remembers Jesus saying, "You have to go back," and her being like, "I don't want to." And I wondered, is there times where it's like, you can edit this out if you want to.
We don't edit anything on the Backstage.
But like,
No,
just
it's Backstage,
just
girl.
this like, is there ever a time where people are praying for resurrection and they have the faith, and Jesus gives them a choice, and they don't want to choose to come back? Like sometimes I'm like, don't pray for resurrection. Like I'm selfish. I feel guilt for my family and my children, but I think I would. Like
somebody said to me the other day, they're like, I can't back this up, but my view and opinion is that everyone gets a chance to come back when they get to heaven, and very few actually like want to or make the decision.
Whether that's true or not, I would believe it would make sense.
Oh yeah. And I mean, we'd never know. I always
tell my family, you better hope I never see that bright light, because I will go running for it.
Yeah.
Was it when we were hunting the other month? Tim Bird, I don't know if you were there. He was telling us a story by Around the Fire. Some of you guys know Tim and Cindy Bird, mothers and fathers of our house. They're visiting here again. He was telling us a story, and of a guy he knew. He was getting emotional, telling us by the campfire. He died, and he says he tells the vision of he's in this field, walking alongside this picket fence with Jesus on the other side, him on the one side, and
he walked forever.
He walked forever, just talking hand in hand with Jesus. Came to the end, and Jesus, I don't know if he asked him the questions, do you want to come here, do you want to stay, or what, but just the real experience of letting somebody, and that guy did come back.
Yeah, that's how we know about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, so crazy. It's
hard to understand, hard to explain.
Yeah, it's so wild. It's like you say, it's like, we don't get it. We don't understand. We're not going to stop. We're not going to change it next time. We do have more questions for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I loved so then Mary and I got back like just in time for the final prayer summit after our 3-day corporate fast. It wraps up all the month of prayer and fasting after the 10 house fires. And there was a moment there where I had felt like when I was over in Edmonton that like just struggling with going through all the emotions. And it's almost like Vadim actually was saying yesterday. He's like, the thing with grief is it's like it's all the emotions, unlimited, 43 feet at the same time. And you actually just like, it's so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming.
It is, yeah.
But just really felt and wrestled with the Lord a lot, like through anger, lots of anger.
Yeah.
And little joys, tons of hurt. Like, I don't even know if at that point it's sad. It feels like sad probably it switches into that 6 months or a year or whatever. It's just like the sharpest, deepest, like barf pain. It's unbearable pain. Yeah. It's almost like unbearable. And this is not even my child. This is my niece.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what they were going through. Like, it actually feels unbearable. It feels unbearable. Like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Mm-hmm. But just really feeling from the Lord that like there's things that we've been saying as a church and speaking from the front that we believe, and really pushing that like we don't create theology off our experiences, off the word Jesus and his words, the word scripture. And that we, at the prayer summit, we needed to plant a flag on the goodness of God, and plant a flag on the fact that like we will still pray for the dead. Yeah. Though this seemed like a failure, we will still push into the blind eyes seeing We will not change our theology. We will not soften our theology. And it almost even felt like maybe for the Lord, but also for the enemy to see like there's nothing you can do. Like like together as a community, like we're actually like so strong and so powerful, and we're going to continue to push forward, and we will not relent. It was such a powerful moment. Was it for you guys? Because I'm sharing this and sharing this story. It felt like something that everyone was grabbing onto. And all of a sudden, these beautiful cliches that we always say became so real. So real.
Totally.
And then the feedback too that I was getting afterwards, just like so inspiring. And people like so inspired and felt like they're in. They're in.
I get that. I love the analogy of the planting the flag. And I mean, you know, you picture the United States doing it on the moon, and the idea being like, we're claiming this territory. And I think the connotation being, you got to be standing in the territory you want to claim it.
Right.
Wow.
So really it's like, we want that. Okay, well, are you willing to go stand in that territory to claim it?
So powerful.
That's hard to do. That's a whole nother, you know, it's one thing to write things on your wall and post on Instagram and preach in front, but to stand in the arena and continue to do what you said you were going to do, to be in that spot, that's different.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful opportunity. It really is. It's an opportunity if you look at it like that.
So true. What do you guys feel like? Have you guys been journaling throughout the month? Like what the Lord's doing?
A little bit.
Like, what do you guys feel like the Lord is doing in the season? Like I was just preaching last Sunday about like understanding the times so that we don't miss them. Understanding what the Lord's doing in this season. What's happening in you guys? What's happening in our people from your guys' perspectives throughout this season? And even going into this emphasis on worship, I don't think it's an accident that it's like, oh, this isn't over. This doesn't end with January 31. It's like there's a worship night at our place tonight. Worship house fire, first one of February. What's happening for you guys? What do you feel like is shifting? What's the Lord doing? What's the Lord doing for our people, our community, Evangel community in this season? Erika, for those listening to audio, Logan pointed at Erika and said, "You go."
You go.
I always like when you go because then I have time to gather my thoughts.
Same.
It's interesting. I think for me, this tension of have I been actively asking the Lord where our house is at? You know, the things, I just feel like there's so much things happening for me on a personal level. Right. But at one of the house fires, we were dreaming about things, and I was like, well, I don't really get anything for the macro. But the Lord was like, the micro makes up the macro. So I'll just share what's happening for me in faith. There's this huge emphasis on seek first the kingdom and all will be added. And just this like inability to kind of, just this hyper fixation on seeking the promise giver versus the promises.
Right.
And then knowing how to pray. And it was like, you know, even just Jimmy, you had asked what book has changed my fasting and my intercession life the most. And it actually is the Blake Healy books of learning how to see in the spirit, because then you know how to pray. Like you have to align yourself with the heart of the Lord to know how
what's
to
going on. Yes.
And so I just feel so stuck in that. And I can't, like, I just feel this obsession with just like, show me your face, show me your face, show me your face. Everything else will happen, but I need to see you or I don't know what to do.
Totally.
And actually, but maybe corporately on Sunday, I actually just felt the Lord like really put on me that there were things that I walked into over the month of prayer and fasting that I'm, you know, the month is over and then there's this thought that you this was your month of intensity, and then you set these things down. And I actually felt like, no, these are things you're not actually going to go back to. Yeah. And I looked around and I thought, is this for everybody? Is there a whole bunch of people in here who walked into a higher level of holiness, a higher level of refined, and it's actually just the next level, the new level of glory, and you're going to go from glory to glory, and you actually don't get to go back.
Right. Yeah, so true and so good. Yeah. And exciting.
I think through the house fires, new levels of hunger, and then if you come to a feast and you're already full of junk food, you're actually not hungry. It doesn't matter how delicious it is.
Preach it.
It doesn't matter if it's your favorite food in the whole world. You're full. Yeah. And so just this season of staying hungry and keeping these distractions and these things that satisfy us and make us think we're full, just a removal and not going back to them.
Love it. That's so good. Seeking the promise giver, not the promises.
Yeah, that's
seeking the healer, not the healing.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Love that. Log, seeing the Spirit. What's the Holy Spirit doing in this?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, on just to join into what you were saying again, you had asked what book has changed our thinking around.
That was one of my questions I was going to start with.
Didn't ask, but we just
didn't.
A book around intercession that's changed my view. The Veil, yeah, definitely one of them. Happy Intercessor by Benny Johnson.
Yeah.
And the title itself is a dichotomy because she describes in the book that she had met people with this gift, this grace of intercession, and they were oftentimes very burdensome, weary people.
Right.
Why? Because they're carrying the burdens of the world and they're constantly praying and, oh Lord, we need breakthrough here, and they're just so burdened by it.
Yeah.
And so her revelation in that book is to essentially pray from a place of victory. So to pray, look at what you're saying with Blake Healy's book as well. Being aware of who he is, seeing him seated on the throne in his rightful place. And when I see you there, now I know how to pray. Because you're underneath it all when you're praying from earth to heaven. It's really hard. You got to pray from heaven to earth. And so that's changed a lot for me. That's why I emphasize worship for the sake of seeing him rightly, so that you can declare him rightly, because you got this fresh perspective.
Yeah.
To pray victorious prayers. That's changed a lot for me. What's happening in the Spirit? I think it's like a big pruning in all kinds of areas. We kind of articulated a little bit in staff meeting.
Yeah.
For me personally, it really is a lot to do with, do I really believe what I say I believe?
Yeah, so good.
Right. When you're pressed. And
your belief is manifested in the way you operate, the actions faith is verified by works. And so that's a big thing. That's what's happening for me. It is this winnowing fork moment. It's this pruning moment. Yeah. Are you in or are you out? I think, I love what you said on Sunday. There actually, by the way, is no such thing as a lukewarm Christian. That's not.
Yeah, we made that up.
That's not a real. That doesn't make sense. I'm trying to think of like another phrase that would be the equivalent of that. It'd be like saying, how would you say that? It'd be like saying I'm gonna marry my wife or something. That doesn't make sense. You're already married to her.
Right. I have a diesel powered electric car.
Yeah. Those don't exist. So, you're either in or you're out. You're hot or you're cold.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, and I think sometimes, especially in leadership, but what God's doing in you oftentimes is what he's doing corporately as well. Again, the macro is made up of all the micros. A result of it's the opportunity to say yes and to dive into the wave, so to speak, and go deeper yet, and further forsake all that was behind you. And if that means some people can't come with, that's okay. That's the cost of going deeper. Well, that's what we're gonna do. We're not gonna forfeit. We're not gonna forfeit the. We're not gonna forfeit what we have access to in Jesus and what he's inviting us into, for the sake of the comforts of the world or the people around us. We're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to go after it. And the way is narrow. And I think some people think that means like, oh, you have to it's so narrow. You have to be so diligent. Don't say dang it. Holiness. Like, of course. Yeah. But it's not, it's like the way is narrow. Will you do things that the world thinks is weird? Or will you believe in things that, I think it looks a little bit more like that. It's like the way is so narrow. There are so few people that actually fully believe that Jesus can still raise the dead.
Yes.
They might say it, they might quote it, but when they're in the room, their actions prove they don't actually believe that.
Yeah.
And the way is very narrow.
Right.
Yeah, and there's few.
Yeah, or not even raise the dead. It's like roll that puppy way back.
Sure.
Healing, bringing salvation, that Jesus could actually change a 45-year-old's perspective who has thought a specific way their entire life, and Jesus could meet him in a moment, and they could actually say, oh, everything I've believed is false and incorrect. I'm going to give my life to Jesus. It's like, man, this is the God of the impossible. Super cool. I love what the Lord's doing, and it does, I mean, really suck that like just the, what's happening with Elizabeth and stuff. But also like some beautiful things out of it, which is like, duh, this is who our king is, Duh. He just takes like broken things and makes them so beautiful. And I think like so many of our like just amazing anointed worship songs and things that have happened are birthed out of such a painful place. Like Logan, I love what you said. Like you can't plant a flag on ground that you're not in. And it's like, oh, when you're it's so much more powerful when you're actually in that ground and you're planting it on that and claiming it. And it's like, we're not saying some future thing. It's like, we're in the middle of this and we're planting this flag. Let's end with this quick question. I did prep you guys on this question. Is there something that you've had to unlearn recently, let's say in the last couple of years, about prayer or intercession, that you realize I believed incorrectly about that, or I've changed my mind on that when it comes to intercession? Would you like me to start? What do you guys think?
Yes.
So you don't have to
please
point.
Please do.
So you don't have to point fingers.
Because you knew you were going to ask this question, so you've already been thinking about your answer.
But that's the cool thing about me is I don't have an answer. You guys are supposed to think about this, not me. But here's what I would say. I do have an answer. Something that I am in the process of unlearning is the sovereignty of God. Is that we know He is sovereign and He plans things and He's in control and He knows the past, present, and future. And that theology is very hard to reconcile and marry that to prayer. Because if you think about it, well, then if there's a sovereign God who just does what He wants, when He wants, then it's like, why would you pray? It's like that biggest waste of time. Stop praying. If you cannot change God's mind or influence Him, stop praying. Biggest waste. And so for me, just like, I think unlearning, but also learning how much freaking power there is in prayer. And we see this in James 5. Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed earnestly that it would not rain in the land for 3 years and 6 months. And it did not rain in the land for 3 years and 6 months. And then he prayed again, and the earth gave way to rain. And 1 Kings 18 verse 1 says it was God's idea to send the rain. So it's like Elijah, it was God's idea to send the rain. It's like God had a plan. He knew how it was going to unveil. But it's like He was waiting for somebody, a powerful person, to recognize the authority that they walk in, a powerful person to release what the Lord wanted to do, but did not do. And He waited for somebody to pray and release it. And then God released it. So for me, the unlearning and relearning is that like we play, I think, a way bigger part than we ever thought possible. A way bigger part. And I think a lot of people think that shrinks God down. I think it makes Him way bigger. Like it actually just makes Him so powerful and so big. And like the thought that He would trust us to the running of the universe, that He handed over to Adam and then it was lost and then regained through the cross of Jesus, has just been mind-blowing for me. Now, the question is then, do I actually believe that? Because it's like, I'm learning that, but then like how I pray and how often I pray and when I pray and why I pray sometimes tells a bit of a different story.
Yeah.
But it's inspiring.
Yeah, totally. So good.
The more you learn it, the power of prayer. But what's something you're in the process of unlearning or relearning? Which is the definition of sanctification, by the way. Your theology should be different than it was last year.
It's a good word.
Or you're not growing.
Yep, it's a good word.
I think
go there,
for
girl.
me, what comes to mind is this picture of like a deep well. And I think I had this deep well and there was water in the well and I could access this well. I could access this water through these tools I've gained. Tools of leading yourself to places and declaring things and pushing into intercession and pushing into worship. And I could go and I could access this water. And I access this water through prayer and fasting and, diligence and it was there. I could access this water. But what I'm unlearning and learning to step into is just, you get a lot more if you just step under the waterfall of grace.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just learning how to do that. Like you can intercede and your intercession can have power and it can have weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you step under the waterfall of grace and you pray from that place, it's a wildly different experience.
Yeah.
And
totally.
if you fast in response to out of love and out of adoration and out of wanting all that God has and believing that your fasting is affecting change versus I'm going to dig deep to fast to earn favor and to just this, and it's just this. Yeah, wow. It's not just, I don't want to reduce it just to striving, because there is beauty in it. You still get water out of it.
Right.
There is still something there. And just watching Liam, Liam had set some goals for himself around fasting. Yeah.
12?
And he's 12. And he kind of just sort of fell off. Just two of his goals, he was like asking for permission from me to like quit. And I'm like, I'm not carrying this energy. Like this is a decision between you and God, but you're breaking a promise to your own self. And, and so then he comes, right before the prayer summit and has just given up all of them. And it's like, we're 2 hours from the end. I'm like, just feeling so much sadness for him and frustration and anger and whatever.
Was he feeling?
At this point he was kind of hiding it or justifying it. And I said, just allow yourself to feel the loss, like allow yourself to feel the guilt, not overwhelming shame, but just the guilt of, oh, I missed out on something here. I didn't keep my word. I didn't stick it out. I didn't follow through with the obedience. But I told him, I said, don't allow this to rob you of what the Lord wants to give you here today. Like he's not going to pour out his spirit on you because you fasted and withhold it from you because you failed, and just to walk that through with him. And he got super rocked at the prayer summit. And I just could see him at the front, just praying at the top and worshiping at the top of his lungs and just, sobbing and totally experiencing the Lord and just thinking, wow, there's these things, these hard things, these disciplined things that he asks us to walk into. And they do bring new gifting. They bring something, but also there's this waterfall of grace just at all times.
Right. Yeah. Which feels like opposites.
Yeah. And but just anything we do out of response to beholding him has a different level of grace on it. Yeah.
No, that's true. That's good. And one's way lighter and way easier.
Yeah.
What am I unlearning? I can't think of one that feels recent, but like you were saying, Jimmy, my actions kind of denote the fact that I am still in the process of it, even though it's been something that I've been working on for a while. I would articulate it as something that sounds like Romans, where it says all of creation is waiting in eager expectation for the manifestation of sons and daughters of God to fix creation. They're waiting for it. And almost like unleashed. This, like, who's going to do it? And looking around, and I guess it's up to me. And there could be this could be the cynical, that's you're pushing into works. And what about sonship? And, even like what you're saying about grace, which that's not cynical at all. That's a revelation in and of itself. But for me to like, it's the typical, you're in a meeting and you're like, okay, someone pray first, and no one does.
That happens in Pentecostal circles?
Yeah, and then you pray at the same time.
It sounds like you need some healing from youth group or something.
Nah, now I'm used. Now I'm fine. I'm totally fine with it now. But that is a picture of like the kingdom of heaven wanting to do all that Jesus already paid for. The timing of the miracle, it already happened 2,000 years ago. It was on the cross. That's when it was all paid for.
Yeah.
And so it's just like all just waiting to see who's going to do it, and this massive ownership and responsibility that I've felt, and I think maybe the part that I'm learning to step into is the beauty of it, because there can definitely be this works mentality, this like fear-based, judgment-based, striving. It's all on me. What I've really feel like I've learned to step into would be the responsibility of it as a son. And I think, my dad's a business owner, and as his son, it is my joy to take up the helm of authority at times and step in and enact what needs to be done for the greater of the. That's my joy. It's not like this heavy weighty thing. But no one else is going to do it. I have the authority.
Right.
And so, it's a posture of sonship. It's a posture of relationship with my father. It's nothing like, I'm not a slave to the slave driver. It is a posture of sonship, and I'm walking in my authority, knowing that no one else is going to do this. It's on me to do this.
It's so cool.
Held in tension. I think for me to like fully own that, and again, that's brought up in the grocery store.
Yeah.
That's brought up when you pass somebody that has a limp. That's brought up when someone passes, and who's going to pray for resurrection? Who's going to do it?
Right.
It's and that's where I'm learning, like, oh, no, this is my opportunity now. Do I still believe that? To say yes to, though a sea of people will be stagnant.
No matter how awkward.
I'll be the one.
Yeah.
No matter what, I will be the one that says yes. That's kind of my declaration. I'll be the one.
Let's
that
go.
Says yes.
Well, I honor you for that thinking. That's super inspiring. And I can get behind that. And I think lots of people can. Like there's like throughout history, there's somebody that like took a big butt risk and people got behind them. I think like Martin Luther King Jr. It's like somebody who like had this big vision and like this dream, and then a whole bunch of people to step behind. It's like, oh, this person thinks it's possible. I'm right with you. Like I love that big thinking, Logs. Which is wild that we have to say that's big thinking.
It's supposed to be normal.
Yeah. Like that should be lifestyle Christianity. I love that. I love, Erika, what the Lord's doing in you. And seeking the healer over the healing. Like it's just been super inspiring for me watching like the Lord just works so much in you. I think specifically the last like few months, like it feels like the Lord's like taking out his big chisel and his big hammer and is molding something in like a expedited fashion, and it's just been super cool to see.
I affirm that, and I feel like prophetic weight even on you said the big chisel, the big hammer, like even the like how you've like been delving into the whole like seeing in the spirit and unleashing the prophet of who you are.
Right.
I just feel like even just a release over you that like, no, those are big chiseled things, meaning those are foundational. Those aren't just added on pieces to the, Erika's a connection guru and
right.
fun. She's this, and she also sees in the spirit. Like, no, these are actually some of the more main foundational pieces of who you are that are just emerging now. Just to affirm that in you. Such a prophetic gift. Yeah.
Super cool. It's interesting because just recently I've been given a ton of words, like just literally a ton.
Like
and
prophetic words.
Yeah. And so I've just been feeling like, okay, God, sitting down and trying to be really intentional. I got to steward them and I got to figure out what you're saying, because it feels like, well, at first I said it feels like a really random puzzle pieces, but I wrote them all out into one paper and I was like, oh,
connected.
This is making more sense to me, and just really feeling challenged to steward this season, or it will just just that partnering with what the Lord's doing, which is, once again, from a place of grace, not from a place of I have to do all these things, because otherwise what he's doing won't be finished.
That's a joy to do it with him.
Yeah.
And it looks so similar sometimes too, but it's just a posture difference.
Yes.
Like from the outside, it actually could look very similar. Well, this has been fun being on the pod. We didn't drop one last week, as you guys have noticed, just from all the chaos that was happening. But we really just wanted to process and steward what the Lord was doing and bring you guys in on it too. And knowing that like we don't have all the answers and we don't fully know what the Lord's doing, but like he definitely is bringing puzzle pieces together, and there's things that are happening, and there's mindsets that are shifting, and there's faith that is being launched, and disciplines, like spiritual disciplines that like, oh, what? There's another house fire. There's another like prayer meeting. There's another worship night. So that's super good. Okay. How are we going to end this bad boy?
Can I do a little like funny noise outro?
You know what, Logs? I'm going to fully let Logan end this podcast.
Give her.
Okay.
That's all, folks.